What's up guys, it's Tom. I'm here in the grain room. We're gonna get our ingredients today to do a New Zealand Hazy IPA using the Cosmic Punch yeast and the British 5 yeast from Omega. It's our first 10-gallon brew day on the Grainfather. I'm so excited. This is brand new territory for me. I did a couple of test batches in the past couple of weeks, get my hands wet, get in there, understand the system a little better. So when I come in today, I've got a little bit more knowledge. But let's talk about first things first, the recipe. So I've got our grains pulled out in front of it here. I'm gonna go over what we're putting into it. In our big red bucket, we have 16 pounds of Thomas Fawcett Golden Promise. I'm gonna get dust all over me. Just next up in front of us here, 2 pounds of pale wheat malt from Weyermann and 2 pounds of oat malt, also from Thomas Fawcett. Next up, we got 2 pounds each in this bucket of flaked oats and flaked wheat. So we have malted and we have flaked. They have slightly different levels of protein than each other, and they're gonna add slightly different things, different levels to the body, different flavor profiles. In this little tub, I have a ½ pound of Golden Naked Oats. They are a crystal oat malt. Last grain, I've got a ½ pound of Weyermann Acidulated Malt. This is enough to bring our whole mash pH down closer to 5.4 to 5.6 during the mash. I have 23 pounds in total of grain, and we're gonna use 9.5 gallons of water that the Grainfather can fit 29 pounds of grain at the capacity. We're doing 23, so we're getting pretty close there. I'm not gonna push it too far though. So Cosmic Punch, I talked about this a little bit, but it has this really interesting ability to biotransform hop compounds into something new. So we're gonna start with this recipe, and we're gonna use some New Zealand hops. I'm gonna use Riwaka, Motueka, and Nelson Sauvin, all of them that have lots of these lovely thiol compounds on their own. And then with the Cosmic Punch, it's gonna just get ramped way up. Another thing that's really interesting about that yeast is the ability to work with compounds you get from mash hopping. So we're gonna put in a little bit of hops in the mash itself. I've got 2 ounces of Wheat pulled aside, and I'm gonna use those. It's another New Zealand hop. It's very low alpha, it's only 1.6. You don't need a super specific, like the transformation that we're gonna get off the mash hops, you can get that from almost any variety of hop, as long as we have some of those compounds in the grain itself. So instead of putting my nice expensive hops in the mash itself, I'm gonna use something else. And then on top of that, I wanna keep the bitterness as low as I can with this hazy beer. So I picked Wheat because it's a very low alpha hop. It's only about 1.6%. So that's gonna go in with all these grains. We're gonna mash in at 152 Fahrenheit for an hour. At the end of that, I'm gonna bump the temperature up to 168. We're gonna hold it there for about 15 minutes. At that point, we'll pull the basket up and we'll start sparging. And so in the back of the store, I've already got the 2 units going. I've got my sparge water heater and I've got my Grainfather. That's the plan. When we get to the boil and we're getting ready to add our hops, I'm not gonna do a bittering addition, and I'll have the entire recipe printed out down below. You can look at it, but I'm gonna do a 20-minute addition of Nelson Sauvin, do 2 ounces. We're gonna do a 10-minute addition of Riwaka and Motueka, 2 ounces each. And then at Whirlpool, we're gonna do 2 ounces of each of them again. So in total, we're doing 12 ounces in the boil. Afterwards, I'm gonna dry hop with 1 ounce each in each container. I'm gonna split the beer into 2 separate speed ale fermenters, and then I'm gonna put British 5 in one, Cosmic Punch in the other. We'll come back in a couple of weeks and we'll see if we can taste a difference. We'll do a little tasting side by side, because I really want to see the difference between the British 5 and the Cosmic Punch, and I'm so excited to try this. I think it's gonna be so cool. I haven't brewed Hazy IPA in forever. I'm super stoked. So I'm gonna get these guys going. I'm gonna mill everything. Like I said, pro tip, mill your malted oats separately and do it a couple of times, then combine them. And I'll see you guys in the back. All right, guys, I'm back. It's been an hour. Let's see how we're looking. Smells really interesting. I love this mix of flaked and malted oats. And malted oats give just a character all to their own that's a little bit different. So you do get a little flavor off of those guys. Pull this up to mash out temperature. Heat on. And let's make the pump go. Okay, so I'm going to bring it up to mash temperature for mash out. It's gonna sit there for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll circle back, we'll pull the basket up, and we'll start sparging. See you guys in a few minutes. Okay guys, we are at the end of our mash out. I have the pump and the heat turned off. Let's take the lid off. I'm gonna pop out our recirc wand. Let's just lay that down like that. And now, let's see, I hope I can do this by myself. We're gonna find out. So let's get the handle in our 2 little holes here. And then when you're doing this, you wanna go slowly at first because there's a lot of liquid. All right, that's not too crazy. We're up. Okay, awesome. Now we went in with just about 9.5 gallons of water. I had to take a little bit out on our sight gauge. We're just about at 6. I think we're ready to actually start sparging. And over here, I've got our sparge water heater turned up. It's at 180 Fahrenheit. I want to collect about 13.5 gallons in here to then reduce down to just about 12. On this particular setup, because there's so many perforations along the sides and through all here, the water drains out a lot faster than you know, a regular sparge where it's going just straight to the bottom. So I'm not really going to be able to collect or have my my water above the grain bed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of sprinkle this over, just draining out of here through my hose, and I'm just going to kind of go all over the grain bed here, which is going to take me a little bit, but I want to make sure that the water is getting consistent throughout this whole grain bed. And I don't think with my current setup, if I just kind of let it go in, it won't do a really effective job. I'm going to do this, and we're going to sparge in a very sort of old-fashioned-y way right now. Sparge arm for this kind of setup, I think that would be ideal. Something that could rest across here like a cross maybe, and then you can come in from your sparge water heater and then evenly distribute throughout the whole grain bed. And I think what I'll do is I'll probably collect until about 12 on the sight gauge, turn the water off here, and allow the grain to drain fully, and then I'll take a look at where I'm at after that's done. While you're sparging, let's turn the heat up, because we can definitely be coming up to a boil while we do this. All right, let's get this up and out, and then I'm gonna set it for a little bit. Cool. I'm gonna set it right outside here, and then the grain can just kind of drain the rest of the way. I'll come back to this in, 20 minutes, half an hour or something, let it cool down, let it drain completely, then I can get rid of the grains, take that guy over to the sink, and start cleaning it up. There's a little bit of grain particles so in the wort itself. So I've got an idea. I'm gonna grab a tool. Gorgeous fall day here in Colorado. Absolutely gorgeous. Let's grab a skimmer. Not a ton of grain, but I did get a little bit of grain. Like I said, I believe from the holes where the grain basket handle goes in to pull it up. So before we get to a boil, let's just use our skimmer. Not much left anymore. So I'm gonna leave that out here and trust that nobody steals my giant basket full of wet grain. We're back, it's a little quieter now. I've only had the heat on for about 15 minutes since I've been filming. I haven't been a whole lot of breaks in between the last few steps I've been doing. And it is already at 197. This is a beast. So we're looking like about 13, somewhere between 13 and 13 and a half. And then because the loss in here is so low down at the bottom, I think I'm gonna go, I'm probably gonna knock out right at about 12, and then cooling and all that, we'll get somewhere between 11 and a half and 11 3/4. And then I'm just gonna evenly split that between my 2 plastic fermenters over here. When you're doing a hazy IPA like this, we don't really want to stack a lot of bitterness from all our different hop additions. So I want a nice, light, juicy kind of character. I don't want a lot of IBUs. So I'm forgoing a traditional 60-minute bittering addition because the varieties I'm gonna be using, Nelson and Motueka especially, pretty high alpha. Riwaka's a little bit lower alpha, it's about 4.8%, the one we have. But the Nelson is high. What's our Nelson? Nelson's 11.4, our Motueka's 7%. So Nelson's our first hop addition. We are using 2 ounces of Nelson Sauvin with 20 minutes remaining in the boil. We're then gonna use 2 ounces of Motueka and 2 ounces of Riwaka at 10 minutes left in the boil. And then I'm gonna do 2 ounces of all 3 of them right at Whirlpool. At that point, I'm gonna turn the heat off, but not begin chilling yet. And I'm going to Whirlpool it for a good, 10 minutes or so. And then we'll actually start cooling it. And we'll get some really nice flavor, some nice aroma by having those hops in there with some heat, but not really actively boiling and cooking them any further. Okay, so I played around with the temperature settings a little bit, dialing this in here for our boiling at altitude. It makes it a little bit trickier than you guys at sea level. But what I have done is I have went and I've changed the boil temperature to 202 Fahrenheit. And then I've changed I put the offset back down to just 0, no temperature correction at all. Let's kind of get a baseline and see where it's at. And then I've set the target temperature for 203. So the unit knows that it boils at 202, it's set to 203, it's got heat going, but it's not trying to go above that. It's, it's balancing all these factors at once to sort of maintain this boil. And so I think that's actually pretty good. We're getting some motion, you can see some bubbling here, we're definitely evaporating, but we're not really overdoing it at all. I've got only about a couple inches there, but I've had no issues with the boil over, coming up to temperature very gently, getting to that boil, along with the defoamer, no issues at all. So I'm definitely feeling super comfortable with the amount of water or wort in here right now, no problemo. I'm not entirely sure at how fast this is going to evaporate. I've got it set at a pretty mild boil, which I think is good. It's being such a wide container, it's going to evaporate reasonably quickly. Particular beer, I'm only doing hops towards the end of the process, the last 20 minutes or so into Whirlpool, so I'm not as concerned exactly with how long it's going to take me to get down to there. I just want to know that I have got a good 20 minutes for that and not going under my target volumes. The liquid level's saying about 12.5. So typically when I do a 10-gallon batch at home, I do collect a little bit more and condense that down a little further. Seeing as that there's not a ton more that I can condense, I don't want to go much past about 11.5 gallons because I want to make sure I've got a nice 2 solid 5-gallon kegs at the end here. I do want to boil this a little bit though. So I think what I'm gonna do is I might actually get a little bit of filtered water and then I'm just gonna top off just a little bit so that I can continue to boil this for about another half an hour and then get to our 20 minutes so I can start adding hops. Because there are some advantages for that long boil. Coagulating proteins, there's other things that are occurring during the boil, so I wanted to give it a little bit of time and not just go for this super short boil. A regular system, you'd have some extra third runnings. That's what I top off with, but because we did all of it in one container, I don't have any other third runnings. They've been draining outside. It's fine. We're learning. We're playing with it. But right now, we're right about there. 12 gallons is there. I want to start knocking out somewhere around there. So yeah, I'm going to top off with just a touch of water, but then I will come back to you guys when we get to the hop section and we'll go from there. I'll let this boil a little bit longer. The water level's back down, kind of to where I started before I added a little bit extra water. I wanted to make sure this beer had enough time to go through that full hour, even though now is our first hop edition. So we're at roughly 20 minutes. I'm gonna get as close as I can, remaining in the boil. And we're gonna add in our 2 ounces of Nelson Sauvin. It's got a wonderful tropical, like that white grape, white wine kind of flavor to it. I'm not using any hop spider at all. The filter in the bottom of this guy works pretty well. In total, I'm putting about 12 ounces in between now and the end of the Whirlpool. Hey, let's go. So 1 ounce and 2 ounces. Love that first initial, they hit the wort, the oil start to come up, things volatilize. Oh, it's gonna smell so good back here in a few minutes. Okay, so 10-minute timer. We're gonna come back at 10 minutes. I'm then going to add the Motueka and the Riwaka. Get ready for our next hop edition. Of course, you gotta get a beer, right? This is actually the first beer that I brewed on the system. It's a Czech pale lager. Hasn't really been lagering super long yet. Came out great. Efficiency was a little bit low in my first batch, but that's why we do a couple times. We learn, get better, we improve over time, but this is delicious. It's a staccato with wonderful malt we have here in the store.
that comes from the Czech Republic, all Saaz, and then I used 3470 dry lager yeast. So cheers, guys. You'll see I got my chiller in here. I'm a creature of habit, like the immersion chiller. It's a 50-foot guy, and once we recirculate during the whirlpool and the chilling, it's going to make quick work of this. So it does come with a counterflow chiller. I like my immersion chiller I have here in the store, so that's what we're using. Riwaka, wonderful, wonderful, newer New Zealand hop variety. We haven't used this before. It's so reminiscent of Citra. There's some berry notes, there's some melon notes, there's some tropical notes. Fantastic. Awesome hop variety. So we're going to put in 2 ounces of Riwaka and 2 ounces of Motueka. Wonderful New Zealand hop here. A little bit more herbal, a little grassy comparatively to the Riwaka. Still lots of that wonderful New Zealand hop character. I'm excited about this beer. I haven't brewed a IPA, much less a hazy IPA, in a while. I'm excited to have these beers on tap again, and I'm super excited to try this side by side with our British 5 and our Cosmic Punch. Wonderful. So this is going to go another 10 minutes. At that point, I'm going to add the last 6 ounces of hops. So far we've added 6. I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm going to turn the pump on. I'm going to start whirlpooling, but I'm not going to start chilling. So I'm going to throw the hops in, and then I'm going to give it an additional 15 minutes in whirlpooling, and we're going to get a lot of great aroma and flavor from that last hop addition. Day 3, I'm going to add in our dry hops to each of them to get a little bit more, well, obviously we get lots of great aroma from our dry hop, but it's going to add some of that good polyphenol haze to the beer too. So each of these beers are going to get 3 ounces of dry hop added somewhere between day 2 and 3, probably day. And I'm going to do 1 ounce each of Motueka, Riwaka, and Nelson again. Probably about 2 weeks to ferment. We'll see. I'll keep an eye on it as I go. And then that will be a part 2 of this video. We'll do a follow-up where I pour the beers, we evaluate them, we'll do a tasting, we'll go over them side by side and see if the Cosmic Punch really did punch our beer, you know? A few more minutes, we'll get to the whirlpool. I'll see you guys then.
We're right here at the end of the boil. I'm gonna turn the heat off, and then let's get our recirculation arm. It's gonna go in the port here, push that down. I'm gonna snake it around the outside of my chiller. Got my last hop addition, in it goes. Okay, now pump on. I'm going to push that down just a smidgies, just under the water level there so it doesn't spray up. Let's take out our Grainfather app. I mean, I could have turned the pump on from there too. Boop. We'll set a 15-minute timer. Love how that works. It's on my phone. Boom, you saw how fast that communicated. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I am not going to turn this on my cold water yet. I want this to stay at this warmer temperature. You can tell the heat is off. We don't see the red over there anymore. The liquid is moving. I've got the arm just under the surface of the wort here. We don't want to make a ton of splashing at this point and introduce a lot of extra oxygen when we don't need to. I am gonna just kind of stir this a little bit to kind of get it going. This is going to whirlpool now for 15 minutes. Get all those lovely, lovely flavors in there. And then I don't have like a little diverter tool yet. When I get to it, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fill the first fermenter up about halfway. I'm gonna go over to the second fermenter, fill that guy up all the way, and then I'll top off the first fermenter again with the second half, and we'll equalize the volumes. That way we're trying to get, you know, an equal mixture of this guy split between these two. An easy way of doing that would simply to have like a T and like 2 little pieces that come off. Been chilling for a couple of minutes now. It is dropping quick. One thing I love to do when you're chilling is save your hot water coming off and use it to clean and sanitize your fermenters. Okay guys, it's the chaotic end of the brew day here. I hope that you can hear me okay over the roar of traffic and all that out there. But we're knocking out. It's going a little slowly, but like I said, I've got those 12 ounces of hops in here. That filter is doing double duty. I'm just gonna go back and forth between these two guys to try to evenly fill them. I didn't end up doing that little splitter. I kind of ran out of time. Whatever, no big deal. But let's grab our yeast. So I got my Cosmic Punch. Both of these, you'll notice, got pretty swollen. That's something that happens with all yeast. It's not anything wrong. If you ever have a swollen packet, you always just want to look at the date and make sure that it's within date, because this swelling is just some CO2 that happened naturally. So this yeast right here Here's out of the camera a little bit. This yeast was manufactured in August 12th, so it's only a couple months old. I feel great. This one was end of July, pretty close in age, about a week apart. Both of them are swollen, but this guy here on the left, got a little sticker on it already. It's gonna be our Cosmic. Shake that up real good. And then I'm just gonna be careful not to touch the inside of this. Interesting, okay. Compared to this one. So very similar. The British 5, just smelling the yeast culture itself, has it's definitely some flocked yeast in there. So let's do this. Get that off the bottom. The British 5 definitely has a little bit more of a fruitiness on the nose. Dank. There's some really interesting kind of dankiness from the Cosmic Punch, and like I guess that the thiols, the sulfurs we talked about. This yeast is super thick. Not as clumpy. That's interesting. It still flocks somewhat, but looking at the bottom of it, it's much more, it's a little bit more powdery in the Cosmic Punch. Okay, which I wonder if that means it'll get a little hazy or stay a little hazy a little bit longer. Only time will tell. Cool. Got everything out of there. So, I'm going to fill these up. They're gonna ferment. Like I mentioned before, we're gonna add our dry hops about day 3. And so it'll ferment, let's say a couple of weeks. As long as it needs to go, I'm gonna keg it up, condition it, and I'll check back with you guys in a few weeks. We'll do a taste test. So super excited for this. Thanks for watching. Check back soon for the taster on all this stuff. I'll see you guys later. Take a peek at that guy. Looks like we're right about 1050 on this hydrometer. So efficiency, not quite as high as I was hoping for, but we got around 60 to 65% efficiency in this, probably closer to 60. So there it is. Lovely, lovely golden color. Okay, last thing I wanted to film. Look at this. This is what that filter can do. I don't know if I would do 12 ounces in there again as it was, but holy crap. Just look at that. Absolutely nuts.